Today, we will be covering the new ACE v2 to ACE v3 side-by-side migration option. As a reminder, App Service Environment version 1 and version 2 will retire on August 31st, 2024. We are now introducing a new side-by-side migration option to allow you to migrate an App Service Environment version 2 instance to an App Service Environment version 3 with little to no downtime. An ACE v2 to ACE v3 side-by-side migration must be performed using the Azure command line interface from a Bash terminal. Currently, there is no portal experience, and the commands we will be using will not work from PowerShell or from a Windows command prompt. Before starting the command line interface to begin the migration process, I'm going to set some variables that will be used by later steps during the migration. As you can see, I've set my subscription ID, the resource group name containing my ACE v2, the name of the ACE v2 that I plan to migrate, the resource group name of the virtual network that the ACE v2 is bound to today, the name of the VNet, and then also the name of a new subnet where I will be migrating my ACE v2 to the new ACE v3. The current in-place migration tool allows you to migrate your ACE v2 to an ACE v3 in the same subnet. The side-by-side migration tool requires that you create a new subnet for your ACE v3. This new subnet is recommended to be a /24. I will start by logging into Azure from the command prompt. I'll then set my subscription context. Now clear the window so we have some room to work. And next, I'm going to retrieve the information for the ACE v2 that I plan to migrate, and also capture those details in a variable that will be used by the later commands. Now that I've captured that information, let me execute the first step in the migration process. This first step will be the validation step. It will verify that your ACE v2 is ready for migration. You may run into an issue that your ACE v2 is not on the current platform build when you run this command. If that is the case, you'll see a message to that effect, and what will happen is when you run the validate command, it will automatically kick off a platform upgrade on your ACE v2. You will not be able to complete the migration while the platform upgrade is underway. You can check the status of the platform upgrade, and once it completes, then you can come back, run the validate step again, and then proceed with the migration. As you can see, we're going to do an AZ REST call to the ACE v2 endpoint, and we're going to call the no downtime migrate option API with a phase of validation. And you can see it returns success. I'm ready to proceed with the next steps in the migration. The next step in the migration is to create the set of new outbound IP addresses for the ACE v3. Prior to doing that, we must create a zone redundancy.json file in the same folder where we are executing the Azure command line interface commands. The zone redundancy.json file is included here, and I have to provide the location of the ACE v2, and then there's a flag that indicates whether I want my new ACE v3 to be zone redundant or not. So you can set this flag to true or false. In my case, I'm going to set this to false because I don't want to create a redundant ACE v3. Again, we're going to call the ACE v2 endpoint with the no downtime migrate API, and this time the phase is called pre-migration. And the pre-migration step again is going to create our new outbound IP addresses for the ACE v3. And notice that I pass in as the body the zone redundancy.json file, which we looked at just momentarily ago. Once that command is kicked off, you can actually run another command to query the status of the progress. And again, we're calling the ACE v2 endpoint, and we're just querying the status of that ACE v2. And the properties, we're going to retrieve the status object to see what the current status of the ACE v2 is. And you'll notice it says migrating. Once the creation of the IP addresses is completed, this value will come back as ready, and we're ready to proceed to the next step in the migration. So I can run this command as often as I like, to determine what the current status is until it's in the ready state. As you can see, we're now in the ready state, and the IP addresses have been created, and we can proceed with the remainder of the migration. At this point, we should retrieve the outbound IP addresses and then make any changes or updates necessary to network dependencies that are reliant on those IP addresses. We can actually run this command to retrieve the newly created outbound IP addresses for the ACE v3. And again, at this point, you should update any dependencies related to networking that are dependent on these new outbound IP addresses. Could be firewall rules, could be third parties that maybe we're accepting requests outbound from your ACE. But make sure you make these changes before proceeding to the next step. The next thing we need to do is delegate the new subnet to Microsoft.web/hosting environments. But before we do that, we need to make sure there aren't any locks on the virtual network. Run this command to determine if there are any Azure locks on the virtual network that the ACE v2 is currently bound to. In my case, there are no locks on the virtual network, but if you do see locks displayed here, you should go to the Azure portal or use the Azure command line interface to remove those locks from the virtual network before proceeding to the next step. Once you have removed any locks on the virtual network, we're ready to proceed with delegating the new subnet to Microsoft.web/hosting environments. We can run this Azure command line interface command to delegate the new subnet to Microsoft.web/hosting environments. And as we can see, our provisioning state has succeeded. We're ready to proceed with the next step in the migration. Before executing the next step in the migration, we must prepare a parameters.json file in the same folder where we are executing the Azure command line interface commands. This file will be different depending on whether you are using a custom domain on your ACE v2 or not. In my case, I am not, but again, refer to the documentation for examples on what this file should look like depending on your scenario. In my case, we must specify the unique Azure Resource ID for the new subnet, which is ACE9 migrated, and then we must also again provide the zone redundant flag, and it must match the configuration from the original zone redundancy.json file that we provided earlier. And in my case, I am not doing a zone redundant ACE v3. Once we have prepared our parameters.json file, we can proceed with the next step in the migration. This command will again call the endpoint of the ACE v2 with the node downtime migrate API, and then the phase this time will be hybrid deployment. The body of the request will be the parameters.json file that we just created. At this point, the major phase of the migration is underway. This step will take somewhere between 3 and 4 hours to complete, typically. Again, you can check the status of the migration by running the following command, and you'll notice the status is migrating. When this phase of the migration completes, the status will change to migration pending DNS change. At that point, we will be able to verify that all of our applications have been successfully migrated to the ACE v3, and once we are satisfied, we'll have an opportunity to finalize the migration. Again, you can run this status command periodically to check on the migration status of your ACE v2 to ACE v3. During this phase of the migration, your applications are still up and running, and no downtime is being experienced. However, you will not be able to manage or make any changes to your ACE v2 while this phase of the migration is going on. So if you try to go to the portal and look at your current ACE v2, the portal may not respond. This is normal and should be expected during this phase of the migration. So fast forward a few hours later, and as we can see, if I run the status command again here, my migration is now in the migration pending DNS change state. And at this point, just so you know what's going on, we've basically created the brand new ACE v3 backend infrastructure in the new subnet that you provided. And all the application content configuration, everything has been copied over to that new ACE v3. And the ACE v2 front-end controllers are still serving up content from an application perspective, but they're now serving it up from the ACE v3 backends that we've just created. So at this point, before you finalize the migration, this is your opportunity to go out and check and make sure all of your applications are running um, as expected and you don't have any issues there before we commit the final migration step. So what we'll do now is we're going to jump over real quick to the Azure portal. I'm going to show you a couple things there. And in my case, this will be fairly quick, and then we'll come back and we'll execute the final steps to finalize the migration. Now, I mentioned this earlier. During this phase of the migration, if you were to go to the Azure portal, try to look at any information about the application, you're going to see some strange behaviors here. So if I go ahead, here's the app right here that's on my ACE v2 that I'm migrating, and you're going to see this behavior in the portal where it looks like it's just kind of hanging. These fields aren't going to ever display. You're just kind of stuck in this little bit of a limbo state here as far as the ability to manage the applications during this phase of the migration. However, the applications are all up and running. They should be serving traffic normally, as we'll see in just a moment. All right, so let me go ahead and bring up my application here in the browser. And you'll notice mine is an external ACE for demonstration purposes. So I've got the p.azurewebsites.net URL here. If you're on an internal ACE, this would be the appserviceenvironment.net URL for yours. But let me go ahead. Again, this is just a simple ASP.NET application here that I've got loaded. It's just a default one. But you can see it's running and executing simply fine, off of the new ACE v3 backend hardware. Now, obviously, you're going to do more extensive testing than what I'm doing here. But once you're satisfied that everything is working correctly, we're going to then go ahead and run the final few commands to commit and finalize the migration of this ACE v2 to an ACE v3. And what that's going to do then is the new ACE v3 front-end controllers will then begin taking on the traffic and serving that up rather than the existing ACE v2 front-end controllers. We'll have some new IP addresses that we'll obtain at the end of the final step of the migration, and we'll provide those so that you can obviously go out and then update any DNS records or anything like that that you may need to as part of that final step of the migration. So let's go back to the terminal window now, and we'll go ahead and run the final commit of the ACE v3 migration. Okay, so here I am back in my bash terminal. Let me go ahead and clear the screen real quick just so we can get a better view of what's going on here. And then I'm going to paste in the final command, which is the one that actually commits the migration. So again, we see we're calling the ACE v2 endpoint with the no downtime migrate API. And this time the phase is DNS change. This is the final step that basically says, hey, I'm satisfied with the way my applications are running on the new ACE v3. Let me go ahead and commit the migration. Now, at this point, if you had an issue, you wanted to roll back, what you would do is contact support. They have a process where they can roll back the migration and get you back to the existing ACE v2 backend infrastructure and everything. So you're right where you were before you started the side-by-side migration process. In my case, I'm satisfied that everything looks good at this point. So let's go ahead and execute this final step to commit my migration. Okay, so again, this is running now. It's going to run anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes to do this final step. And again, you can check status periodically to see what's going on. So let me go ahead and do that. And you'll notice now the status is completing migration. And again, once this is completed, that status is actually going to change to migration completed. We will be on all of the ACE v3 front ends and back ends. Everything will be finished. The ACE v2 will be deleted at this point, and I'll show you how we can display and retrieve your new inbound IP addresses for the ACE v3 in case you have to make any network changes there. So again, you can check on this periodically just to see how it's going. And then once you see that migration completed step, we'll go ahead and we'll show you how to do the retrieval of the new inbound IP addresses. Okay, so fast forward to roughly 60 minutes or so later, and you can see that my migration has fully completed. I'll run the status command again, just so we can get a fresh output from that. And so you can see migration is completed now. So at this point, all the traffic is now routing through the new ACE v3 front ends, all the content and the applications are loaded on the ACE v3 backends, and we're fully migrated over to our ACE v3 now. The ACE v2 still exists. It's out there, but it's in the process of being deleted. So you may be able to go out there, see it in some of the lists in the portal and things like that, but things will be getting cleaned up and it may be gone even by the time you go out there and take a look at things. But at this point, if you were to go out and browse the portal, you should see the ACE v3. You should see your applications there now, and everything should check out normal. So let's jump in the portal and just take a look around and see how things look. Okay, so here I am in the Azure portal. I'm on the App Service Environments list here. Remember, number 9 was the one that we migrated from ACE v2 to ACE v3. So if I go ahead and click on this now, we'll see over here under the version that we have an App Service Environment v3. It now resides in the migrated subnet, which was the new subnet that I provided for number 9 there. I can see my applications listed here. I can see my app service plans listed here. I should be able to link over and now take a look at all the details and everything on this application, right? So we don't see this situation where things were kind of hung or just kind of waiting to be loaded. Now we can see all of our details then and be able to fully manage our app service environment, app service plans, and the apps on them via the Azure portal. Okay, so I've walked through all the steps involved with doing the side-by-side migration using the tooling. As you can see, many commands involved. Potential, obviously, for some errors there with syntax and things like that. So what I've tried to do to make this much simpler for folks is kind of put together a couple of bash scripts that kind of encapsulate all those commands that we just went through to make it easier for folks to get through this. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly go through those bash scripts, show you how I can run those and how they simplify this process. Okay, so in my Git repo that I provided a link to earlier, and I'll also be in the summary slide, there are 2 scripts that are provided in the repo. There's a side-by-side.sh, and that's going to be the one you're going to run first, which is going to do the bulk of the migration all the way up to the point where we get to that migration pending DNS change state. And then, of course, once you've done your validation and you're ready to go and do the final commit of the migration, then you're going to run the finalize side-by-side.sh script. So when you download the repo, you're going to do a chmod u plus x on both the side-by-side.sh and the finalize side-by-side.sh to make those executable in your bash environment. The repo also includes a sample copy of the zone redundancy.json file and the parameters.json file. Again, go to the documentation, make sure you've got those correctly configured for how you're going to deploy your ACE, whether it's zone redundant or not, or whether you're going to use a custom domain for your ACE v3 or not. But the scripts now are really just going to make this really simple and kind of prompt you and walk you through all of the different steps. They're also going to give you opportunities to then check status and things like that. So you don't have to kind of run all those status checking commands and the commands to retrieve IP addresses and things like that. The scripts kind of got all that built in. So let me go ahead and we'll kick off this first one. Let me go ahead and clear the screen just so we got a lot of room here. And I'm going to do a side-by-side.sh to start this up. And again, you'll notice right away you start getting prompted. So I'm just going to drop in my values here for my ACE that we're going to migrate this time. Grab the resource group name here, and we'll grab the name of the ACE. This is my number 10 ACE here that we're going to be migrating this time. Oops, looks like that didn't take. Let me go ahead and clear this and we'll start again. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and grab this. For some reason that did not paste in. Okay, that looks good. ACE now. All right, we'll grab the name of the resource group for the virtual network, grab the VNet name, and then new subnet name that we're going to be using for this migrated ACE. In this case, this is going to be ACE 10 migrated for the new subnet. Okay, so it's going to want me to log in, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, it's going to clear the screen, and now it's going to start executing the command line interface commands to start our side-by-side migration. So first thing, hey, I'm getting ready to do the validate on your ASE v2 migration to ASE v3 using side by side. Press any key to continue. Let's do that. Okay, validation has succeeded. And now it says preparing to create a new outbound IP addresses for your ASE v3. Make sure you have created your zone redundancy.json file in the current folder and press 1 to continue or 2 to cancel. So let me go ahead. We're going to press 1 to continue, creating IP addresses. So again, now it's going to say, look, hey, IP address creation is in progress, and you can press any key to check the status, right? So we can go ahead now, just press a key. It's going to go ahead in the script and run that command to tell us what the current status of the create IP process is. And the current process is migrating. Again, this is going to take 15 minutes or so, but you can periodically now check this. You don't have to worry about the commands. The script's got all the appropriate commands in it. So we're good to go at that point. So we'll just give this a few minutes and then we'll come back and we'll check on the status. Okay, so at this point you can see we got the ready status. Our IP addresses have been created successfully. And then it's going to actually show you the new outbound IP addresses for your ASE v3. And again, there's a little reminder here. Please update any network dependencies you may have, such as firewall rules, with these new IP addresses before continuing. Okay? And then once you have updated your network dependencies, press any key to continue. And then it's just going to list any locks that might be on the virtual network before we do anything else. So again, at this point, before continuing on with the delegating of the new subnet, make sure that you update any network dependencies with these new outbound IP addresses, right? So wherever you might have whitelisted the outbound IP addresses for the ASE v2, you want to make sure you apply those same changes to these new IP addresses that have been generated for the ASE v3. And again, in my case, I don't have any locks on the virtual network. If this list displayed any locks on the VNet, then you're going to want to go to the Azure portal or, command line, PowerShell, however you want to do it, but remove those locks from the virtual network before proceeding to delegate that new subnet to the Microsoft.web/hosting environment. So that's where we're at right now. Again, I don't have any network dependencies to update or anything like that. But you can go ahead here. In my case, I'm going to press any key and we'll do the delegation of the subnet. Okay, so we can see that again, if we look at the delegations, we can see that Microsoft.web hosting environments, the provisioning state has succeeded. And now you'll notice it says, hey, we are ready to start the side-by-side migration. Make sure you have created your parameters.json file in the current folder, and then press any key to continue. So at this point, we're going to move into that final phase of the migration where we're going to get everything set up on the new backend infrastructure for the ASE v3. And this is the process. It's going to take anywhere between 3 to 4 hours or so. So we'll go ahead and we'll start this now, and then we'll come back and check the status and everything like we were doing when we were running the individual commands. So let me go ahead and kick this off. Okay, side-by-side migration is in progress. This will take between, well, this says 3 and 6 hours, but that's for an ASE v1. And in our case, you can't do a side-by-side migration with an ASE v2. So it's typically, again, between 3 and 4 hours to complete. And again, I can now just press any key to check the status. And we'll see the current status is migrating. And again, I can just periodically come back, hit the enter key here. It'll go out and query what the current status of the migration is. So we'll go ahead and we'll come back in a few hours and we'll see where we're at and move on to the next step in the script. Okay, so after several hours and quite a few status checks, as you can see here, we finally get to the situation where our current status is the migration pending DNS change. So again, at this point, all of our backend ASE v3 resources have been set up. All the applications and their configurations, app service plans have all been copied over to the new ASE. And the ASE v2 front-end controllers are directing traffic to the new ASE v3 backend. You'll notice there's a message here in the script that says, hey, side-by-side migration has completed and your new ASE v3 resources have been created. Please test and validate your applications. When you are satisfied with the results of the migration, run the finalized side-by-side.sh script to commit the migration. If you need to revert the migration, contact support. Okay. Oh, it looks like I've got a little syntax error here in my script. Didn't affect the way it ran. I'll get that fixed up. But at this point, we're again in that situation now where the applications are all should still be running. They're being served up now by the V3 backend through the V2 front end controllers. If I go to the Azure portal, we'll again be in this situation where here's my application. You'll notice the status is other at this point. If I try to go to the management interface in the portal, this is all, again, it's not going to come up. We're just going to kind of be stuck in this situation here where things are just kind of hung at this point, which is expected. But I should be able to go ahead and launch the application, and it should still be functioning without any issues and serving up traffic. So let me just open up a tab here, and I'll drop in the URL for that application. And again, this is just a simple ASP.NET app, but we can see that the application is serving traffic just fine. So again, you would go through whatever extensive validation you needed to for your applications at this point to be satisfied that everything is functioning correctly. In my particular case, I can see that everything appears to be working right. So let me go ahead and we'll jump back to the command shell window here. And we'll go ahead, I'm going to clear the screen again so we can see what's going on. And we'll go ahead and run the finalize script. So, /finalize side by side .sh. Again, it's going to prompt for a few things here. So let me pop those in, get the subscription ID, paste that in. And again, we need the name of the ACE resource group. So let me grab that real quick, and we'll paste that in. And then we need the name of the ACE, again, that we're migrating. Okay, and that's all we need for the finalize script. All right, so it's going to now go ahead and execute the commands necessary to just do that final commit. And of course, it's going to ask me to log in first because it's a separate script. So let me go ahead. I'll quickly sign in here. And then again, it's going to set the subscription context once it does that. And then it's going to go ahead and run those final commands to just commit the migration. So finalizing ACE v2 to ACE v3 migration, press any key to continue. And you see finalizing migration is in progress. This will take between 60 and 90 minutes to complete. And again, we've got a little option in the script where you can just press a key to check the status of that final migration step. So you'll see the current status is completing migration. And again, we can periodically come back and just press key again and get a status check. So we'll come back in a little bit and check on this and walk through the final couple steps and slides and go from there. Okay, fast forward roughly an hour now. You can see that I checked status and I got the current status of migration completed. And you can see my ACE v2 to ACE v3 migration is complete. And here are your new inbound IP addresses. All right. So in my case, I have an external ACE. So here's my new inbound IP address. If I had DNS records or anything like that that needed to be updated, I could now go ahead, take my new IP address, make those changes. If mine was an internal ACE, I would be displaying here the list of the new private inbound IP addresses. And again, take those, make any network updates that are necessary. But at this point, my migration is complete. As you can see, using the two scripts really simplifies the process of doing a side-by-side migration rather than running all of the individual Azure CLI commands. So at this point, we're pretty much wrapped up. And just a quick summary here. Remember, things are going to retire as far as App Service Environment version 1 and version 2 on August 31st of 2024. We've got this new side-by-side migration feature that allows you to upgrade an App Service Environment v2 instance to a v3 instance with little to no downtime. And again, I've included the links to the key resources here, the overview of the side-by-side migration process, the step-by-step walkthrough, and then the link again to my GitHub repository where I've got the 2 bash scripts that can help you really simplify this migration process. So hopefully this has been helpful to folks, and good luck on your ACE 2 to ACE v3 migrations going forward.